She arranged things as best she could and sent the updated schedule out to the rest of the staff. The princess would meet with Duke Malorn, Grand Archmage Ronan, and a few other corporate leaders and dignitaries, but the rest could wait for the king to return. "Are you ready?" she whispered to Narune. Narune shook her head but replied, "I suppose." Cel turned her lips and nodded. The last thing the princess wanted to do was run the monarchy, and this was the third time in as many months that the king had put her in charge while he rested a bit. Cel wondered whether the king was genuinely sick or just trying to force his daughter to get acclimated to the responsibilities of ruling. Narune had been raised since birth to inherit the crown. She'd been through this before, and she would get through it again. Cel would make sure of that. "Duke Malorn of New Didrossel Colony," Cel announced. The guard nearest the entrance used his mage stone, a smooth gemstone centered on his forehead. The crystal glowed, which caused the doors to open and admit the Duke. All Malans possessed a mage stone, gifting them certain abilities. They could levitate and move objects at will as port them, disappearing them from one location and reappearing them in another. They could even port themselves short distances. The Duke had passed through the doors, keeping his shoulders square and his nose held high. He wore a 7-piece, custom-tailored suit, so complicated that Cel doubted the man could dress himself without help. 2 small pins adorned his lapels. One bore the banner of New Didrossel Colony, a pale blue flag with 2 gold circles and a white crescent shadow in black connecting them, representing the binary stars overlooking the colonized planet. The second depicted a glowing navy mage stone to emphasize the man's purest ideology. The Malans were the superior race, a view shared by most in the colony. He stepped up to the throne and lowered himself into a bow but kept his eyes trained on the princess. "Your Highness, thank you for seeing me today in the king's absence. I do hope whatever ails him is not serious." "You have no need for concern," the princess replied. "I can assure you. What business did you wish to discuss with the king?" "His Majesty and I were in deliberations over the appropriation of funds to my lands. It is not of great concern, but the matter was nearly settled. We have the votes from Parliament and only require the royal court's consent. If your Highness would be gracious enough to finalize the matter, I will not take up more of your time." He bowed once more, this time all the way down until his nose nearly reached the floor. Cel knew little about the Duke, but she knew King Marisol was not fond of him. She did a quick search on her mat for previous discussions between the two. Sure enough, the last time the Duke had been here, the king outright refused the request because the projects the money was to be allocated towards would only enrich the Duke's coffers. Before Cel could mention it, Narune said, "Well, if you have Parliament and my father's prior approvals, I see no reason to hold up or deny the request." Cel needed to act fast. "Excuse me, Your Highness?" The Duke's nose shot up in her direction. He gave her a glance suggesting something between frustration and a longing for murder. Cel gulped and held out her mat for the princess. "I've brought up the previous meeting's notes for your review." Narune winked at Cel, taking the mat. She looked over the section Cel had highlighted for her. "Oh, I see," the princess replied, nodding. "There seems to be a few unresolved issues regarding these funds. I do apologize for the inconvenience, but I feel this is a matter best handled by the king himself. Would you consider tabling your request until tomorrow?" Duke Malorn's expression hardened.
My ship leaves this evening to return to New Didrossel. I was hoping to get this matter resolved today.
According to the notes from your prior discussions, the king has twice refused your request. If you have the votes in Parliament, then the king cannot prevent the appropriation. However, if you choose to go forward, it will be at the protest of the royal court. The Duke didn't respond immediately. He stood in the center of the room, fixed like a statue on display. After a long pause, he replied,
I would prefer the crown's support.
Sel wagered the Duke only had Parliament's support if the king approved. Then you must wait for the king's return to obtain it, Narune replied. The Duke's face shriveled into a scowl, but he held his composure.
Of course, Your Highness. I shall wait for another time to make the 3-week journey from New Didrossel to Ankaros to speak with the king.
Either the princess did not pick up the sarcasm or ignored it. Rest assured, my father will be eager to see you again then. The Duke lowered his nose into one last curt bow before making a hasty departure from the room.